Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. Welcome to episode 9 of our special series, In My Place. Now, over the last 9 months, we've talked with national and local guests about homelessness. We've discussed everything from best practices to worst failures. And also, we've heard from people who intimately know the complexities of having nowhere to go. A lot of information has been shared over the course of this series, and today we're attempting to wrap it all up as it's the last day in this series. And we want to learn if homelessness is actually solvable. In My Place was created thanks in part with support from Pinnacle Financial Partners. And with that, allow me to welcome our first guest. Ann Oliva is the CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, a national nonprofit leader that focuses on supporting decision makers at the national, state, and local levels to build systems that are able to solve homelessness. And thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this convo with you today.
I am excited too. So here, let's start with the big question. Is homelessness solvable?
So the easy answer is yes, but let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because I think there's some misinformation about this out there. I say yes, first, because I believe it in my body and in my soul that homelessness is solvable. I'm the CEO of an organization called the National Alliance to End Homelessness. And if I didn't believe that, I shouldn't be in this position, first. But second, not only do I believe it in the way that I'm articulating that, I know it because the evidence tells us that it's solvable. And I know it because we cut homelessness among veterans in half in this country over just a few years, implementing practices that we could do for all sorts of other people who are experiencing homelessness.
What does solving homelessness actually mean?
So it doesn't necessarily mean that nobody will ever experience housing instability or that they won't become homeless for a really short period of time. What it means is that we have systems in place to help prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place, in terms of homelessness prevention, rental assistance, services that help people weather a storm that happens in their lives. But if somebody does fall through the cracks, we have a system in place also to help them recover really quickly and get back into housing and stability as quickly as possible. So that's what I think ending homelessness means.
But I mean, I'm interested in what it takes to do that, the processes. You mentioned the systems that we have in place. Not every city, not every municipality, not every community has the same set of systems. And some of these systems have limited resources, as we've learned over the past 9 months as we've done this series. What is it going to take to fully buttress and support these systems so that they can achieve the goal you just laid out for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to answer it in 2 ways. The first is, in my experience, there are 3 components to the work of ending homelessness. It takes leadership. And what I mean by that is elected leaders and nonprofit leaders and faith leaders all working together towards the common goal. So first is leadership. The second is good evidence-based policy. What does the research tell us works? What do people tell us they want and need in order to end their homelessness? So that's the second, sort of leg of the stool. And the third, as you mentioned, is resources. If you have leadership and really good policy and program design that is informed by people with lived experience of homelessness, you need the resources in order to implement that program and policy. So, as you mentioned, there is actually no community in the country that has all of the resources they need in order to meet the needs of people who are either experiencing housing instability or who are experiencing homelessness in their communities. So we need elected leaders at all levels, the federal level, the state level, and at the local level, to put resources on the table. And that means safe and affordable housing and the services people want and need to be able to maintain that housing.
You know, Tennessee was the first state to adopt a law that essentially made camping on public land a felony. And the U.S. Supreme Court this year, they allowed local jurisdictions to decide whether to close encampments and find people without a place to sleep, regardless of available shelter beds. Tell me this, what are the Alliance's recommendations for local cities that are pursued by the public to move homelessness out of sight? Because I understand what you're seeing by mentioning leadership, good policy, and resources. But I think the binding ingredient that's missing that we need is the desire. It doesn't seem to me that the Supreme Court thinks legally or the state of Tennessee lawmakers have the desire to do something about homelessness.
Yeah, when we think about that question here at the Alliance, we actually think about narrative and public opinion. And I think the homelessness sector has never really had to focus on the public narrative around homelessness in the way that we've had to over the last several years. And in part, that's because unsheltered homelessness, which is the most visible kind of homelessness, it's the kind of homelessness that people who are not working in this sector or in affordable housing think of when they think about people who are experiencing homelessness, has increased every year since 2016. So as homelessness has become more visible, there has been more and more pressure on elected officials to be seen as doing something. And a lot of times that means making political decisions rather than strategic decisions. So we feel really strongly here at the Alliance that in addition to the leadership, the policy, and the resources, we actually have to educate the public and educate elected leaders about what it's going to take to end homelessness in your community, in your state, across the nation, and get people to support that in their local elections.
What are some suggestions on how the public, the communities here in Nashville and Middle Tennessee, what suggestions do you have with the Alliance that could help educate people? People say they have a desire to, again, they want to have something done to solve homelessness, but a little bit of the effort seems to be lacking. That's what we've learned over the course of this series. How can people be better educated?
So the first thing that I would say around better education is, so we have a lot of incredibly talented and passionate people working in our field, people who are on the front lines of this work every single day, getting people into housing, helping people access services, behavioral health services or healthcare, so that they can end their homelessness. And I think it's really important to make sure that they are using their voices, that they have stories to tell, and they're important. It's what you've been doing over the course of this series, right? Like amplifying the stories of people who are on the front lines or who have experienced homelessness or are experiencing homelessness, so that the public can understand what that experience is like and make better decisions when they are, choosing at the ballot box or deciding how to talk to their friends and neighbors about this issue. So I think it starts there. I also think that we need to make sure that all of the elected leaders understand their role, what part they have to play in actual solutions, because we know from all of the research, we know from all of our experience that actually finding, ticketing, and arresting people does not work. Not only does it not work to end homelessness, it actually makes the lives of the people who are impacted much more challenging, and it makes the work of the people who are on the front lines much more challenging. And in the long run, it's actually not going to have the desired effect, which is to decrease homelessness. And then the third thing I would say is it's really easy right now to tie a conversation around safe and affordable housing that a lot of people are having, whether it's on the coasts or whether it's in cities or in rural areas. Safe and affordable housing is a topic of conversation in people's kitchens, in mayor's offices, in county councils. And we need to be able to tie that conversation to what's happening in terms of the increase in the number of people who are experiencing homelessness, because the tie is so direct. And I think that that will help people connect to how people are impacted by these systems that fail them over and over and can become homeless themselves.
You know, something else that's going on are natural disasters, climate change. Natural disasters are getting a lot worse, and people are immediately displaced from their homes. We've seen that in Nashville after Hurricane Helene. Tell me, how does climate change impact homelessness, and what do our cities and communities need to consider when preparing for these potential disasters?
That's a great question. And if we had been doing this podcast, or I guess podcast didn't exist 20 years ago, but if we had been doing this conversation, let's say pre-Hurricane Katrina, I'm not sure that there would have been a good answer for you. I have worked disasters myself. It's part of my my past career has been working disasters since Hurricane Katrina. And what I can say is that planning is key. Make sure that your local emergency management agency is looping in with emergency shelters and with homeless services providers and outreach providers so that they are incorporated in any disaster planning that's done at the community level or at the state level. We try to do that at the national level as well. And then the other thing is that if you have ever been to a disaster shelter a couple of weeks after the actual event, you will see that the people who are left in those disaster shelters are the folks generally who have been marginalized in their community or who were experiencing homelessness or housing instability before the natural disaster. And so we really need to be able to make connections either back into or into housing for folks who are in those shelters before those shelters close, so that we're not just saying, oh, our job is just to get people back to where they were before a natural disaster. We actually want to make sure that people have somewhere safe and affordable to go in the event of a natural disaster. And if we don't do that, you're right. Climate change is going to continue to increase the number of people who are experiencing homelessness, especially after these events.
You know, throughout this series, we've made it a mission to hear from people with lived experience. You alluded to this a little bit earlier.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, it's very, very, very important. To answer this for me, how important is it to include folks who have experienced homelessness in the decision-making process? And what would you like to see communities do to improve that?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. And I noted it earlier because I think that that has been a unique and really important part of the conversations that you've been having locally, right? And through this podcast. I believe that you have to make sure that people who are experiencing homelessness now or who have experienced homelessness are part of every step of the process, because those of us who haven't experienced homelessness don't know what it's like to move through the system that's supposed to be designed to serve them. So, you know, what I think a lot of communities struggle with is tokenism. Having one person on an advisory board isn't going to do it. You actually have to hire people for positions within the structure, the decision-making structure. You need people on your board of directors if you're a nonprofit organization. And I would go so far as to say that we need to start shifting power, right, to people who have had lived experience of homelessness to make sure that what we do going forward is responsive to the needs that they have identified over time.
You know, the idea of shifting power is tenuous, even to some who are supporters and actually wanted to do everything they can to solve homelessness. I mean, some folks, they really put a lot of weight on training, expertise, and education, and they feel that those should be the people leading the decision-making process. What can be done to take the gatekeepers, however well-intentioned, to get them to change their perspective and allow people with actual living experience, who cares if they have a master's degree in this field, they have a master's degree in life in living this. What's it going to take to get people to shift their views so we can actually bring in more folks to help something?
So first, I want to be clear that expertise includes lived expertise. You don't just get expertise by going to school or getting training. There's all different kinds of expertise, and it all has to be honored. And I'm not suggesting that we take a bunch of like super technical work and dump it on people that don't have training. I think what we have to do as leaders in this field, if we are serious about shifting power, is to ensure that that we are providing the opportunities for people, like I said, to be hired and to get the same kind of professional experience that the rest of us have gotten. I started in this work myself as a Vista volunteer. I didn't show up as CEO. I worked my way through various levels of our work in order to learn it. I don't have a master's degree, and I'm the CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So I think that we have to, if we're going to say we're honoring all expertise, lived expertise needs to be honored, and we have to create paths in what is honestly sort of a white dominant culture set of organizations. We have to be really intentional about it, and we have to create those paths with intentionality and with people who have lived expertise, or it's not going to work. Shifting power is always hard. I've tried it in a couple of different ways, and I've learned a lot from it. But we have to be intentional about it.
The producers for this show were really excited to have you on, and I'm excited that you were able to be here with us. Ann Oliva is the CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Ann, thank you again so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Khalil, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Hopefully you stick around and listen to the rest of our conversation. It should be an exciting one. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk with Mayor Freddie O'Connell and a local panel about how Nashville is working to end homelessness. Stay with us.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. Mayor Freddie O'Connell is a regular guest on the show, and today we've invited him to talk about his approach to the affordability crisis in Nashville. Mayor O'Connell, thanks for being here.
Khalil, glad to be back with you to talk about that issue.
Yes, and so, you're on the campaign trail for a more affordable transportation plan. I want to start our conversation with the impact of that transportation plan and the improvement program that you propose would have affordability in Nashville. So during your campaign for mayor, your motto was, quote, "Let's build a Nashville for Nashvillians."
Yep.
So what are the next top issues besides transit that you want to tackle to ensure that Nashvillians can afford to live, work, play in the city and in Davidson County?
Yeah, so we do think that transportation is going to be one of the key elements of our overall affordability toolkit. So we are strongly encouraging people to get out and vote. And look for that last item on their ballot where they will see our Choose How You Move program focused on sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. It's a ballot measure. You'll see it on page 2. All the information about voting is at vote.nashville.gov. That's one big piece. It's an element we've spent a lot of time and energy on this year. But we've also been developing new tools in our affordable housing toolkit. One of my favorite moments earlier this year was being able, after working with and arguably fighting for years to keep alive the project that has now been opened as Strobel House. It's our first public permanent supportive housing facility. We do have a $50 million investment in mitigating homelessness. All of that is there for the most vulnerable residents in our entire city. We have also launched a new Catalyst Fund with our housing division at the Metro Planning Department, which is where most of our current affordable housing strategies are emerging in partnership with our office. That fund is something that was led by First Horizon Bank and Vanderbilt University as a major early donor. Metro put $20 million into that. That's a housing preservation strategy. One of the best ways to keep affordability in the city is to maintain it where it already exists. So if you have, let's say, an apartment building that is full of residents that have enjoyed stable rent for a long time, but the owner of that building is thinking of putting it up for sale, we want to enable mission-driven developers to get in there quickly, participate with the market, and make sure that they can keep those rents stable. And so the Catalyst Fund is one of those elements. By the end of the year, we're expecting that the housing division will have in our hands a unified housing strategy. That's going to give us, I think, a lot of opportunity to do a few things. It's going to expand our affordable housing toolkit, possibly explore some new ways to invest in that that we have not been able to pursue previously. And we're hoping that it also lets us accelerate delivery of strategies like permanent supportive housing that bring housing and services together. We've had some discussions about new approaches to building up home ownership opportunities through things like shared equity, where maybe a public-private partnership lowers the cost to start the process of home ownership, but you wind up not maybe owning outright in those first few years, but if there is a sale of a property, you still get some return on investment. So there's a lot on the table. And then we're doing programs like Nashville Strong Babies, which is an amazing combination of a local investment through our Metro Public Health Department and a new $5 million multi-year grant from Health and Human Services at the federal level that lets us offer countywide for completely free prenatal and infant support to mothers and infants, letting people celebrate more first birthdays together. And in the 5-year pilot period in just a handful of zip codes, we had a 100% maternal survival rate for participating mothers. So being able to do that countywide is something that we're offering. We are very excited about a new program we just launched for seniors, which is called Reset, with AgeWell Tennessee, Tennessee Justice Center, United Way, other key partners. It's a companion to our existing Financial Empowerment Center. Already today and for the past decade, anyone in Nashville can go see a free financial counselor, fec.nashville.gov, to make an appointment. But we've now partnered with these other organizations to explore available benefits opportunities. One of the things that's going to be most important over the next several months is increasing enrollment in the trustees' office's program for property tax freeze and relief. The trustee manages this, and thanks to good state leadership from Representative Harold Love and others, we now have an expanded income ceiling for that. So Nashvillians who earn $65,000 a year but may be retired and on a fixed income can enroll in those property tax freeze and relief programs. We're trying to maximize participation and enrollment in programs exactly like that across the board. So all of that stuff is a part of our overall approach to trying to keep the cost of living reasonable for as many Nashvillians as we can.
What ingredients are missing from this plan, and how do you intend to address those gaps?
The biggest missing ingredient in our overall affordability toolkit, if you look at peer cities, is in fact transit and transportation and the infrastructure that supports it. So that's why the decision we'll make together as a city on November 5th is so critically important. And that supports people with disabilities, that supports unhoused Nashvillians, that supports people newly arriving here. It supports our lower income communities in particular, but ultimately it is a huge cost savings measure. And in fact, it is a form of financial empowerment. It was my and our family's pathway to home ownership too, because being able to save money at a rate where you're spending about $1,000 a month on reliable access to a car for owning, maintaining, fueling, insuring, and increasingly parking that vehicle, if you can put that into the other things in your life, childcare, nutrition, housing, it makes such a huge impact. So that is the biggest missing ingredient. I think Elsewhere across the board, we're seeing strategies that other cities are pursuing, but we also know that in Tennessee, we've got a tough state legislative policy dynamic that does give us some constraints that not every other city has to deal with, but we try to embrace those where we can. And this also lets us tap into more federal money. But this is something that our administration has also been very focused on, is we want to get as strong a performance as we can from our philanthropic community and our state and federal partners to bring in funding to relieve pressure from local taxpayers. And so we're starting to see that work. We've got the Nashville Early Education Coalition that just launched that we are participating in that is focused on childcare and that pre-K period. So if we've got Nashville Strong Babies, a great partnership with My Brother's Keeper that's going to bring some, again, foundation funding into the city. We've got the Nashville Early Education Coalition. All of those things helping people get started correctly. Some great performance in metro schools where we have committed and joined Dr. Battle in her priority to ensure that every student in our metro school system gets free breakfast and lunch. We don't want anybody trying to go learn on empty stomachs. To me, that is also a key part of it. We're going beyond the K through 12 pathway with support for Nashville State Community College, where the Nashville grad program, we made an early decision last year as I took office to expand books and tuition and other incidental support for Nashville State enrollees to part-time students. It was so encouraging and heartwarming as we got to this past May when I got my first opportunity to speak at a commencement, and it was Nashville State and one of our Nashville Flex students who had enjoyed the support of that program. A public investment in personal success was one of the commencement speakers along with me, and those kinds of stories, getting people started on that journey, coming into better positions in the workforce, and then knowing that we're also as a city going to be looking out for them as they retire and age is so important.
Let me finish up with this. Is homelessness solvable in Nashville?
I still believe, from going back to when the Metro Homelessness Commission was first ever established, and it has evolved since then, to what is now a Homelessness Planning Council with some better alignment with our continuum of care. The things that we have seen other cities and states do, again, we have some challenges, but I think ending chronic homelessness still has to be a guiding principle for not just Nashville, but for other cities, knowing that any city has had success and more success than we have had moving in that direction. It's something we still need to have as a guiding principle. But I know from recent work when I served on first the Homelessness Commission and the early days of the Homelessness Planning Council, having a housing crisis resolution system is so important. If we can ensure that that process of if you become homeless for any reason, that you don't stay in that condition for more than a short period, and that you've got some rapid rehousing opportunity is important as we start to continue to improve our capacity as a city to offer scenarios like permanent supportive housing, continue to build out backbone organizations with partners in our philanthropic community. I think it's out there in the future, but I think we also have to continue to strengthen our day-by-day approach to just that housing crisis resolution system.
Mayor Freddie O'Connell, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate it.
Khalil, thanks. Good to be back with you.
Yes. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. It's the 9th and final episode of In My Place, our special series brought to you in part with Pinnacle Financial Partners. We're talking this hour about the solutions to homelessness. We just heard from Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Now let's meet our panel. Jamie Berry is the Chief of Staff of the Metropolitan Development and Housing Agency, also known as MDHA. Brian Hale is the CEO of Neighborhood Health, and Sean Leslie, who has lived with expertise. Pardon me. He's a vendor of the Contributor, that's Nashville Street Paper. I want to thank you all for being with us. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you.
All right, so real quick from all three of you briefly, what are your reflections on what Mayor O'Connell just said? Jamie?
I've known the mayor since his days as a council member. I've been with the agency, MDHA, for 10 years, and he has always had a passion for the people who are experiencing homelessness and wanting to find a way to help solve this problem. So I'm not surprised by his message, and it's hopeful that we have a mayor that is so supportive of working towards this end.
Brian.
I think Jamie's exactly right. Knowing Mayor O'Connell's heart is just he has a profound commitment to see things dramatically improve in Nashville. I think the other thing that he mentioned was, especially about the trustee or the tax rebate for lower income seniors, one of that is important, and we increase eligibility for that and funding for that. But one of the things that Mayor O'Connell also understands is we just got to stop killing trees in this town. I mean, we have a separate application for that program, for 4 applications for energy assistance. We have a separate application for food stamps, another application for a different nutrition program for moms and grandmas who have kids that are hungry.
It's a lot of paperwork.
And that's only the half of it. So we've got to make sure that we lower the time tax on the poor and stop killing trees, make things more accessible so that really people can access the benefits to which they're entitled.
Tell me what you think, Sean.
I don't know the mayor that well, like both of these kings and queens. I don't know them. I don't know him that well, but I know he's got a lot on his plate. I'm hoping that he takes the time to help out homeless, not just talk about it, but show action. Because people that are homeless, and I've been there, that are living on the streets, like I said before, we deal with depression. So that's a lot to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Now, Jimmy, tell me this. What is MDHA's specific role in addressing housing affordability in Nashville?
Yeah, so we have approximately 30,000 Nashvillians that we house currently, and our role is to find ways to create new housing. And we're doing that through our KC transformation. We're creating new housing there. But one of the other things is finding the right partners, because no one entity, agency, developer can do this alone. And so in order to really move the needle, we've got to find partners who have a passion for affordable housing, who are committed to affordable housing to help us do that. One development at our KC transformation may have 5 different partners, including our state partners at THDA. And including Metro. And so, just finding the right partners is really key to that. And one example I'd love to share, Curb Victory Hall. That was a development that we did a few years ago, and it houses 37 veterans who were experiencing homelessness. And again, that's nearly 40 veterans who are experiencing homelessness that now have housing. But that was so many partners coming together to make this happen. And it was multiple partners, nearly 10 partners.
I understand you all have been redeveloping housing units to become mixed income communities, right?
Correct.
How is that going?
It's going really well, actually. We've been doing that for about 7 years, and we have completed at just one site more than 600 units. And more than half of those have been for our Casey families who are receiving subsidy.
Okay. Now, Brian, you represent the healthcare sector. How can we ensure that we reach people who are experiencing homelessness and serve them well while they're in need?
I think the key part to that is making sure that there is no wrong door in the healthcare system for people, for anyone, but particularly those who are unhoused. And one of the things, Neighborhood Health has 12 clinics in and around Nashville, and we see individuals experiencing homelessness at every single location to get medical and dental care. It's an incredible opportunity for us to really live out our mission. I think that needs to be true for all healthcare providers in the city. And one of the things that we're working with the Nashville Rescue Mission and others to do is to make sure that we move people into a medical home, and that while there's so much turbulence in their life, there's at least one organization and one set of organizations that they can lean in on and really feel like they've got a medical and dental home to march with them as they go through this experience. I mean, what Sean said a moment ago about living with depression, whether that's what forced you onto the street or whether that's something that developed while you're on the street, that's a very real medical condition, and we're here to help people who have that. We're here to help everybody in Nashville. If you have a pulse, you can be our patient, and that certainly includes our unsheltered neighbors.
What are some of the largest gaps in these local systems? And conversely, what can we do to fix them, close them?
So one of the things that's an ongoing challenge is that the ERs continually people are brought into the ERs when someone calls 911 and an EMS shows up and asks someone, do they want to transport? We've got to make sure that if they get to the ER, that ER, we develop a work process so that ER can efficiently get them to a different location for follow-up primary care. That's probably our number one challenge with all of the hospital systems. And we're blessed in Nashville to have 3 or 4 very large hospital systems, but those hospital systems don't work necessarily well together or with other partners. So we're working to improve that. I think there's a lot of people working in good faith, and we hope to see some progress to report back in about 12 months.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. Have you back on the show with the report of that progress. Now, Sean, as I mentioned, you're a vendor for the contributor.
Yes.
You have a signature greeting for all of your customers. Can you share with us what that is and tell us about how selling the paper has kind of helped you in your journey to move off the streets of Nashville?
Well, I consider everyone kings and queens. I call everybody king and queen because I believe all of us have God in us. And it brings me joy to meet people that like me and don't like me. Because over the years, I've learned to love all no matter what. Now, I understand both of them are doing, amazing jobs. But the only thing that I wish that would change is that when you see homeless people on the street, or you hear about homeless people on the street, or you're trying to help when they, like you said, they come to the office. But to me, I think you should go to them. And the reason why, because most homeless don't want to come to you even when they're sick because they feel like nobody would help. Most homeless and don't want to come to you and say, hey, can I have housing? Or, hey, can I have some health care? Because they've been let down in their lives before so many times. They don't have the money. And that's why I believe that what you're doing is helping. And what you're doing is helping too. But I believe that you should have a staff get together some people and go out there to Wego bus station, the little wooded areas on the sidewalks, and ask people, how are you doing? I work for such and such. Can I help you?
Let me ask you this, man. What do you wish could change in Nashville and make things better? Because you did bring up that people are depressed. There's people who have homes,
right,
who aren't without homes, who are depressed, and they understand that. I mean, over the past 10, 15 years, there's been greater discussion in the United States about mental health and people looking out and battling against depression. Very rarely is that talked about with people who are underserved, with people who are unhoused. What do you want folks to know? What can Nashville be doing better?
Nashville can just stop overlooking a person with depression, number one. Because if you stop overlooking a person with depression, it can help. Because like I said, people that have jobs, they still deal with depression. People that, work under a lot of stress on the job still deal with depression. But then there are people that decided to give up on themselves. That's when a person needs to come up to you and say, hello, my name is Sean, and how can I help you? And they're going to tell you what you can do. You see what I'm saying? Because when you just stay in the office and sit back, and we can all sit here and talk about it, there are people committing suicide. There are people who are thinking about doing things wrong to go back to jail. There are people thinking about hurting others because they feel like that might be a way out. there are people that are crying because they have their child with them that, you know what I'm saying, they don't feel like there's no way out of being off the streets. And now I see a lot of young generations, and there's a lot of young generations, women that are having babies and they're 14, 15, 16 years old, and they're on the street. Mm-hmm. But I hear that the state can't help them until they get a certain age, or they'll put them in a foster place, or they'll take the child away from them. So that'll make a woman or a man just want to create chaos.
I understand. Let me ask this final question to all three of you. Jamie, I want to start with you. Is homelessness solvable in Nashville?
I think we can move the needle in Nashville. I think that we can put a dent in the crisis. And I think we can do that by creating housing for all. And what I mean by that is, there's such a, people who can afford workforce may be living in those affordable units, so they're taking up those units. Mm-hmm. And so people who could live in market are potentially staying in workforce units. And so if we can create enough, then we can absolutely house everyone in Nashville. And everybody deserves a home.
Yeah. Brian?
I think Sean hit the nail on the head. Is we can do this if we listen to the right people and we bring the right heart. One of the things about our organization is that by law, more than 50% of our board of directors have to be patients. And I have two board members who have lived experience with homelessness, and they forced us to start a street outreach team. In fact, Sean, I'm going to ask you to be on our board. I want you to be my boss here in a few minutes. But the idea is that we've got to bring talent and match that with experience and drive this forward. If we do that, and we do that well, we can succeed. Oakland has done a really amazing job in the Bay Area. We've got a lot to learn from them, but that's what they did. They listened, they brought really technical talent and expertise, married it with commitment and voice, and they got real success.
Sean, I'm going to close with you real briefly. Can we do this? Can we solve homelessness here in Nashville?
I feel that if we come together as one and take the time to go out into the streets and greet the people and, and talk to them, yes. But if we sit in the office and just sit back, wait for a homeless person to come to you, no. Because homeless is tired and got tired of asking for help.
So you're saying we've got to take it past the coffee shop conversation and actually get our hands in it.
You've got to get out there and greet and meet the people. Yes, they might smell bad. Yes, they might look bad. Yes, you might not want to touch them. But remember, they're human beings. Mm-hmm. We all are human beings. And we all go through depression. We all go through our ups and downs. It's just most of us go through our downs than ups.
All right, I want to thank my guests. Jamie Berry, Chief of Staff of the Metro Development and Housing Agency, Brian Hale, CEO of Neighborhood Health, and Sean Leslie, who's lived experience and a master vendor of The Contributor. Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one last break. When we come back, we'll invite someone with lived experience with homelessness and hear what they have to say about today's conversation. Stay with us. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Kulona, and this is Nashville. It's the 9th and final episode of our special series, In My Place. Now, for 9 months, we've talked with national and local experts about the best practices in solving homelessness. And as usual, we're ending our episode and this series giving the last word to a person with lived expertise. I'd like to welcome back Deidre Childress, who's been one of our regular guests, commentators, and a personal homie of mine. Deidre, welcome. Thanks for being here.
How you doing? Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm great.
All right, you listened to this show. You've listened to this series. What are your final thoughts?
It's been great. It's been great. And you asked what are my final thoughts, so you really want to know what I feel like we could have talked more about.
Yes, tell us what has not been said.
Hidden homelessness, that's one to me. A lot of people struggle before becoming unhoused. And one of the guests that we just had talked about depression. A lot of families go into a mode of depression, mental illness, different things, death, trauma happens. And I feel like we didn't talk about that a lot. Lack of support up front, community gun violence.
Yeah.
A lot of things in a lot of ways people become homeless. So I think we should talk more about, we could have talked more about hidden homeless and prevention.
Prevention. I would want to get to that, but really break down hidden homelessness for anyone who doesn't understand or is not familiar with the term.
So to me, hidden homeless is people that struggle. You don't see people that's homeless, right? Mm-hmm. You don't see people that's doing the struggle before becoming homeless. Like I said, lack of job. You can lose your job, don't have the enthusiasm to go look for another job. You lose your place. We see all these people that's up front saying, I need help and I'm homeless, but you have so many people that's not begging and asking or even coming up front to let you know they are unhoused. I don't really like to say homeless, so we'll say unhoused.
Okay.
So that's for me. That's my definition. So
you said something about, prevention is a big thing. Mm-hmm. When I understand prevention, there's so many ways that it can be handled. Obviously, in the education space, not just only providing better education to young people and opportunities to them, but in my experience as a teacher, you got to work with the entire family and the entire community as an educator. What are some other places where we could improve in being aware of some preventative methods?
Well, first thing I think about when I say prevention, shifting power. The lady, Miss Ann, she spoke on maybe we need to replace some of these higher leaders, hierarchy with lived experienced people. And to me, that's part of prevention. But we need to focus on the youth, like you just said. And that's what we do at Gideon's Army. We have changed our mission to focus more on mission-driven approaches to keep them focused on what path their life would take and to keep them aligned with once they become adults, young adults, they will have preventive ways of becoming unhoused adults. And a lot of our youth are already unhoused. And so that's very scary. But prevention, it takes services to change the mindsets of the youth. And it takes services to change the whole family dynamic. So if you have a youth that's homeless, most likely the parents are homeless. Or if you have a parent that's homeless, most likely the youth is homeless. So we just need to come up with preventative services. And I think our local organizations can do it. We just need to shift and gear the responsibility, back to the community.
What about talking about community responsibility? There is the thing called NIMBYism, not in my backyard. People will have signs, posters on their lawn talking about they care and love about everybody. But when it comes to creating a mixed income development or low income development in their neighborhood within reach, they're not necessarily getting on that train anymore. They don't live up to what their signs say that they are. How much of a problem is that?
I think it's privilege. A lot of people moving here, a lot of people that's living in these neighborhoods that we're trying to blend and mix together, I believe they feel privileged. They feel like they too privileged to be with somebody that's unhoused or be with somebody that's under margin of their income, right, based on income. So to me, I think that's a privileged thing, and I think it's very ungodly because we don't supposed to be proudful and boastful, right? We're supposed to be humbled, So I really can't say much about that. We overlook over that. The work that I do every day, looking out for folks, I overlook. If you don't want to help somebody, that's on you. You got to deal with that on your own time. So
all right, so what do we really got to do? We got like a minute left. What do we really got to do? What do you want to share with everybody listening?
Like I said, we need to strengthen our leadership, and we have plenty of room to do it that right here in Nashville. We give a lot of power to people making decisions, but we could use lived experience people in their places. And like the last lady said, the MDHA lady,
Jamie,
merging people together would be the bomb because we don't see that here. We need people with coordinated entry, people with lived experiences, and even government officials. We all need to merge together, come together. Local churches, nonprofits. I think that'll be a big bomb if we all could come together.
We had the mayor on earlier in the show. If the mayor approached you, as far as someone who had lived experience, about being a part of a coalition and being in a leadership position to help coordinate things for the city, would you say yes?
I would most definitely say yes.
All right. I want to thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for offering these salient last words in this series. Deidre Childress, thank you again for being here and sharing your truth.
Thank you.
All right, and thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Judith Tackett and Tasha A.F. Lemley. It was directed by Mary Mancini. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Pinnacle Financial Partners. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation does not end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Instagram and tell us what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. You can also call us to leave us a message at 615-751-2500. This is Nashville, and I'm going to say my name slowly because a listener emailed me and asked me to say it slowly so they get it right. I am Khalil A. Kulona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.